He, a solitary tycoon, harbored a secret love for the cleaning lady. She, Melissa, was head over heels for him, but convinced that our love is impossible. Mark had been watching her for years. In a crucial moment, Melissa pushes him away. "Stop! Mr. Vanderbilt, our love is impossible. I'm just a cleaning lady and you're the CEO. The statement hits Mark hard. He can no longer keep the secret and reveals that he has loved her for years and that for him, their love wasn't impossible, but the only truth. Get ready for a plot twist where a secret love is revealed amidst a scandal. But the strength of this love can break down all barriers. Watch this story until the end. You'll be amazed by this story. If you like love stories, romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing. The alarm clock rang at 4:30 a.m. like it did every day. Melissa Silver rubbed the sleep from her swollen eyes and got out of the thin mattress she shared with her younger sister in their small room in the Bronx. The sound of the rain on the tar paper roof mixed with her mother's persistent cough from the next room. "Mom, did you take your medicine?" she whispered, peeking through the crack in the door. Mrs. Carmen was sleeping restlessly, her chest rising and falling with difficulty. The diagnosis of emphysema had arrived along with a hospital bill that consumed more than half of Melissa's salary. In the tiny bathroom, she looked at her reflection in the cracked mirror. At 36 years old, the marks of the daily struggle were beginning to etch themselves around her brown eyes, but her determination remained unwavering. She tied her dark hair into a simple bun and put on the navy blue uniform of the cleaning company. "Mel, did you leave money for Pedro's bus fare?" shouted Lucas, her 17-year-old brother, from the kitchen. "On the living room table, and don't forget to take Mum to the doctor at 3, she replied, checking her wallet. $12.50. It would have to be enough for the fare and a snack. Meanwhile, 25 miles away, in the penthouse of a luxury condo in Manhattan, Mark Vanderbilt finished his morning run on the treadmill, watching New York City wake up through the bulletproof glass of his apartment. At 39 years old, he commanded an investment empire valued in the billions. But success in business did not fill the emptiness that grew in his chest every morning. The phone rang. Robert, his personal assistant, was already at his post. "Good morning, sir. The meeting with the Koreans has been rescheduled for 10. Carlos called 3 times about the holding company project. And your mother is insistent on dinner tonight to meet Fernanda," said Robert, referring to the daughter of an agribusiness magnate that Constance Vanderbilt had chosen as the ideal daughter-in-law. "Cancel dinner. Make up an emergency," Mark murmured, adjusting his Italian silk tie in front of the mirror. "And Robert, today I'm going down to personally check the cleaning on the 30th floor." It was a lie. For 3 years, since Melissa had started working in the building, Mark had been making up excuses to circulate through the floors during cleaning hours. He watched from afar that woman who cleaned every surface with an almost reverential care, who greeted everyone with a genuine smile, who carried a silent dignity that hypnotized him. At 6 in the morning, Melissa arrived at the Vanderbilt Tower, a skyscraper of glass and steel that rose imposingly in the financial district. In the basement locker room, she exchanged greetings with the other cleaning staff. "Today you're on the 30th floor alone, Melissa. Carla called out sick again," informed Mr. Johnson, the supervisor. "And make it sparkle, because the management has been complaining." The 30th floor was sacred territory, boardroom for senior management, CEO's office, Carrara marble reception area. Melissa knew every inch of that space, every detail of the minimalist decor that cost more than her entire house. It was 8 in the morning when she wiped the last piece of furniture in Mark Vanderbilt's office. The mahogany desk reflected her blurred image, and for a moment she allowed herself to imagine what it would be like to sit in that leather chair, making decisions that affected thousands of people. "Excuse me?" The deep voice behind her startled her. Melissa turned quickly, her heart racing. There he was, Mark Vanderbilt in person, impeccable in his charcoal grey suit, his dark hair slightly greying at the temples, his blue eyes fixed on her with an intensity that took her breath away. "Mr. Vanderbilt, I'm sorry, I was just finishing up," she stammered, trying to get past him to leave. "No need to leave," he said, his voice softer than she expected. "I just wanted to check if everything is in order." For a moment that seemed eternal. They looked at each other. Melissa felt as if he could see through her, discover all her secrets, including the one she had kept for months. The way her heart raced whenever she saw him in the corridors, how her eyes searched for him involuntarily, how she dreamed of impossibilities during sleepless nights. "Everything is perfect," she murmured, looking away. "With your permission." But as she passed him towards the door, the broom handle got caught on the edge of the desk. The bucket of water tipped over, spilling dirty water all over the marble floor and completely soaking Mark's Italian leather shoe. Melissa turned pale. The blood drained from her face as she looked at the damage, then at the soaked shoe, then at his eyes. "Oh my God, Mr. Vanderbilt, I'm so sorry. I'll clean it up. I'll pay for the shoe. Tears began to well up. Mark looked at her, small, mortified, trembling with fear, and something broke inside him. 3 years watching that woman, admiring her strength, her dignity, and now she was there, shattered because of a stupid accident with a shoe he didn't even care about. "Melissa," he said softly, and she looked up, surprised that he knew her name. "It's nothing. Accidents happen." But it was too late. The door opened and Robert rushed in, followed by 2 security guards who had heard the noise. "Sir, is everything all right? We saw the commotion and—" Robert stopped when he saw the scene, his boss soaked, the cleaning lady crying, water everywhere. The embarrassment in the air was palpable. Melissa knew that this wouldn't end well for her. Asterisk. In the days following the shoe incident, as Robert had nicknamed it among the management staff, Melissa lived in a constant state of alert. She expected to be called to HR at any moment to receive her termination letter. Every look from her colleagues seemed loaded with pity or morbid curiosity. "Girl, you drenched the CEO of the company," muttered Mrs. Newser, a cleaning veteran, as they organized the supplies in the storage room. "That's not something easily forgotten." But days passed and nothing happened. Even worse, Melissa began to notice Mark's constant presence in the hallways. He appeared at the most unusual times, always with some professional excuse, but his eyes searched for her with an insistence that unnerved her. On Thursday, while cleaning the women's restroom on the 25th floor, she overheard the conversation of 2 executives. "Did you see how weird Mark has been acting? Just yesterday, he showed up at the reception desk at 6 in the evening, said he wanted to check the security procedures." Fernanda mentioned that he cancelled 3 dinners that his mother organized. Constance is furious. "Do you think he has a mistress?" Melissa felt her face burn. It was impossible that they were talking about her, but the coincidence of the times disturbed her. Mark Vanderbilt was the most sought-after man in New York City, rich, handsome, powerful. Why would he waste his time pursuing a cleaning lady? The answer came on Friday, during the most humiliating episode of her professional life. Melissa was cleaning the boardroom when she heard voices in the hallway. She immediately recognized the shrill voice of Constance Vanderbilt, matriarch of the family and majority shareholder of the company. "Mark, you're being impossible." Fernanda is a girl from a good family with a degree in business administration, with all the qualities to be a suitable wife. "What more do you want?" "Mom, I've already said I'm not interested." Mark's voice sounded tense. "Don't be ridiculous. You're 39 years old. You need to get married and continue the family name. I won't accept that you continue with this mania of being alone." Melissa tried to leave discreetly, but bumped into the chair, making a noise. The voices stopped abruptly. "What was that?" asked Constance. The door opened and Mark appeared, followed by his mother, an elegant woman of 60 years, all dressed in white, with her platinum hair tied in an impeccable bun. Her blue eyes, identical to her son's, scanned Melissa from head to toe with barely disguised disdain. "Oh, it's just the cleaning lady," said Constance, as if Melissa were a piece of furniture. "You, young lady, finish up there and go clean somewhere else. We're having a private conversation." The blood rushed to Melissa's head. She gripped the mop handle tightly, but kept her voice controlled. "Sorry for the inconvenience. I was just finishing up." "Mom," Mark's voice sounded dangerously low, "she has a name. It's Melissa." Constance raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Since when do you know the names of the cleaning ladies, Mark?" The silence that followed was deafening. Melissa felt as if the floor was going to open beneath her feet. Mark's eyes met hers for a moment, charged with tension, before he looked away. I need to know all the employees," he muttered. "How interesting," said Constance, her tone icy. "Well, be that as it may, we have important matters to discuss, about your future, about your commitments." Melissa didn't wait to hear more. She left the room with wobbly legs, her heart pounding in her chest. There was something in the way Mark had looked at her, an intensity that haunted her, and there was something in Constance's reaction, as if she suspected something. The weekend passed in agony. Melissa barely managed to eat, tormented by the scene. On Monday, she arrived at work determined to keep a total distance from anywhere. She might meet Mark Vanderbilt, but at 10 in the morning, Mr. Johnson called her. "Melissa, you've been requested for a special assignment. The people on the 30th floor want you to organize some files in the CEO's office." "Me? But I'm in cleaning. I don't organize files." "Orders from above, girl. And look, you better do a good job. Seems like there are some important people watching you." Melissa's heart sank. Important people watching her could only mean trouble. She went up to the 30th floor with wobbly legs. Mark's secretary, a middle-aged blonde woman named Sandra, greeted her with a forced smile. "Oh, you must be Melissa. Mr. Vanderbilt specifically asked for you. He had to leave for a meeting, but he left very specific instructions." Sandra led her to a room next to Mark's office, filled with file boxes. "He wants you to organize all of this in chronological order. It will take at least 3 days. You'll work here from 8 to 5, with a break for lunch." 3 days. Alone, on the floor where Mark worked, Melissa looked at the dozens of boxes and understood that there was no choice. She needed the job. She needed the money for her mother's medicine, for Pedro's school. "You can leave it to me, Mrs. Sandra. I'll do the best job possible." "Great. And Melissa," Sandra approached, lowering her voice, "be discreet. There are many watchful eyes around here lately." When she was alone, Melissa wondered what she had done to deserve this situation. 3 days, organizing files, just a few feet away from the man who wouldn't leave her thoughts, under the watchful eye of a family that clearly saw her as a threat. What she didn't know was that, on the other side of the frosted glass wall, Mark had cancelled all external meetings for the next 3 days. Asterisk. The first day in the file room passed in tense silence. Melissa worked methodically, organizing documents by date, but constantly felt the weight of gazes. Through the frosted glass, she perceived movements in Mark's office, shadows that seemed to stop near the partition between the rooms. On the second day, he appeared. "How's the progress?" The deep voice startled her. Mark was standing at the entrance to the room, impeccable as always, but there was something different in his eyes. a vulnerability that she had never seen. "Good, Mr. Vanderbilt. I think I'll finish tomorrow," she replied without raising her eyes from the files. "Mark," he said softly, "when we're alone, you can call me Mark." Melissa felt her heart race, but kept her focus on the documents. "That wouldn't be appropriate, sir." He approached, and she perceived the scent of his cologne. Something expensive, masculine, that made her dizzy. "Can I help?" "You have more important things to do." "Actually, I don't." The honesty in his voice forced her to raise her eyes. "I haven't had anything truly important to do in a long time." There was a deep sadness in those words that touched something inside her. For a moment she saw not the billionaire CEO, but a lonely man. "Everyone has something important," she murmured. "You have an entire company depending on your decisions. Companies, employees, shareholders," he sighed, picking up a random file. "But that's not living, it's just existing." They worked side by side for an hour in almost comfortable silence. Melissa noticed how carefully he handled the documents, how he made a point of not invading her personal space, how his fingers trembled slightly when they accidentally touched while grabbing the same file. "Why are you doing this?" she asked suddenly. "What? Appearing here, staying close to me. Your mother made it very clear on Friday that people like me should keep their distance." Mark stopped organizing the papers, his fingers clenching into a fist on a folder. "My mother doesn't speak for me." "But she's not wrong, is she?" Melissa turned to face him. "We're from different worlds. You have commitments, expectations. Expectations of others, not mine. And yours? What are they?" For a moment, Mark seemed about to say something, but he controlled himself. Instead, he picked up a photo that had fallen out of one of the folders, an old company record from more than 15 years ago. "This is the first headquarters of the company," he said, showing the image of a modest building. "My father built everything from scratch. I was 24 years old when this photo was taken." Melissa examined the image. She saw a young, smiling Mark next to an older man with a gentle appearance. "He looked proud of you." "He was. He said I would be different from the other businessmen, that I would never lose my humanity on the road to success." Mark laughed bitterly. "I think I disappointed him." "Why?" "Because I became exactly what he feared. A man who hides behind money and power, unable to be honest even with himself." There was something in his voice, an old pain that made Melissa's heart clench. "What happened to him?" "He died when I was 30 years old, heart attack at 55. The doctor said it was the stress, but I know it was the disappointment." Mark put the photo away carefully. "In the last months of his life, he tried to talk to me about things that really mattered. Love, family, happiness. I was always too busy to listen. And now it's too late. He's gone, and I've become everything he didn't want me to be. A rich and empty man." Melissa felt a tear run down her face. There was so much pain in those words, so much loneliness. "It's never too late to change," she whispered. Mark looked at her with an intensity that took her breath away. "For some of us, it is. When you build a whole life of lies, of appearances, of choices that weren't yours." He stopped, as if he realized he was revealing too much. "What choices?" He was silent for so long that Melissa thought he wouldn't answer. "My father wanted me to marry for love. My mother wants me to marry for convenience. I never knew what the difference was. Until I saw what it really is to care about someone, to worry about a person's well-being more than your own, to feel that her happiness is more important than any business, any fortune." Melissa's heart was beating so hard that she was sure he could hear it. "Are you talking about someone specific?" Mark took a step closer, then stopped, as if fighting with himself. "I'm talking about a woman who taught me what my father was trying to tell me, that dignity is priceless. That strength doesn't come from power, but from the ability to move forward even when everything seems impossible. That real beauty is in the way someone treats others, not in what they wear or where they live. Melissa's hands trembled. He was describing her? Mr. Vanderbilt, for 3 years, I watched this woman from afar. I saw her daily struggle, her dedication, her kindness to everyone around her. And with each passing day, I fell more in love, knowing that I could never have the courage to say that to her. Why? The voice came out as a whisper. Because men like me destroy women like her. Because she deserves someone pure, true, not a coward who took 40 years to discover what really matters. What if she didn't care about that? Mark smiled sadly. She would care. A woman like her would never forgive a man for hiding the truth for so long, for being a coward, for letting fear decide for him. At that moment, Sandra knocked on the glass door. "Mr. Vanderbilt, your mother is here, and she brought Miss Fernanda." Mark's face closed immediately, all vulnerability disappearing. "Tell her I'm in an important meeting. She said she'll wait as long as necessary, and, well..." She saw Melissa. In here, Melissa felt her blood run cold. Through the frosted glass, she could see 2 female silhouettes in the main office. "Go," she whispered to Mark. "Go resolve this." "Melissa, go. Please." He hesitated, then nodded. But before leaving, he turned one last time. "What we talked about here, it means everything to me that you know it was true. Every word." And he left, leaving Melissa alone with a broken heart and the terrible certainty that she was hopelessly in love with a man who had just confessed to being in love with her, but who could never assume that love. Asterisk. Throughout the afternoon, Melissa tried to concentrate on the files, but her ears picked up fragments of the conversation in the office next door. The honeyed voice of a young woman, Constance's authoritarian tones, Mark's monosyllabic and tense replies. "Date is already set, darling. The country club, 300 guests. I can't keep postponing this indefinitely, Mom." Fernanda is a patient girl, but all patience has its limits. When the visitors finally left, it was already past 6 in the evening. Melissa was alone on the floor. Or so she thought. She had finished organizing the files and was preparing to leave when she heard a strange noise coming from Mark's office, a muffled groan, as if someone were in pain. She hesitated. It wasn't her business, but the sound repeated, more anguished. She knocked lightly on the glass door. "Mr. Vanderbilt, is everything all right?" Silence. She opened the door carefully and found him sitting on the floor behind the desk, leaning against the wall, his face pale and his breathing erratic. He had loosened his tie and unbuttoned the top button of his shirt. "My God," she ran to him. "What happened? Should I call an ambulance?" "No," he said with difficulty. It's not physical." Melissa knelt beside him, instinctively placing her hand on his forehead. It was cold and damp with sweat. "Panic attack," Mark murmured, his eyes closed. "Happens sometimes when I feel cornered." "Breathe with me," she said gently, taking his hand. "Slowly. Inhale, hold, exhale." For long minutes, they remained like this asterisk, Melissa guiding his breathing, her small, calloused hand holding his, her soft voice soothing him like a lullaby. Gradually, he recovered, but he didn't let go of her hand. "Thank you," he whispered. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did. I wasn't going to leave you alone like that." They looked at each other, still on the floor behind the desk, their defenses completely lowered. It was the first time Melissa had seen him truly vulnerable, stripped of the armor of power and wealth. "Was it because of the conversation with your mother?" she asked gently. Mark nodded. "She set my engagement for next month without consulting me." "With Fernanda?" "With the daughter of the country's largest soybean supplier. A business merger, disguised as a marriage. His voice was full of bitterness. She said she's waited too long for my rebellious phase to pass. Melissa felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. And you, are you going to marry her? I don't know how to escape. Contracts are already being drafted, alliances being formed. If I cancel now, it won't just be a marriage that ends, but hundreds of jobs, partnerships, investments. Isn't your happiness worth more than that? Mark laughed humorlessly. For people like me, happiness is a luxury we can't afford. That's a lie. Melissa's voice came out firmer than she intended. You have a choice. You always do. Not when your choices affect thousands of people. Does what you want even matter? He looked at her with an intensity that made her blush. What I want is impossible. Why? Because it involves asking an incredible woman to abandon her life, her family, everything she knows, to face with me a world that will do everything to destroy her. Because it means risking not only my reputation, but hers too. Melissa's heart raced. They were approaching a dangerous line, and they both knew it. What if that woman was willing to take the risk? She's not. She can't be. It would be crazy. Have you asked her? Mark approached imperceptibly. Would it be fair to put on her shoulders the weight of a decision that could destroy both of our lives? It would be honest, Melissa whispered, and sometimes honesty is worth more than protection. They were so close now that she could feel his breath. Mark's blue eyes scanned her face as if he wanted to memorize every detail. Melissa, yes? If I do something crazy now, will you hate me? Depends on the crazy. In response, he raised his free hand and caressed her face, his thumb tracing the line of her cheek. You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, he murmured. And it's not the beauty of the face, it's the beauty of the soul. Mark. It was the first time she had said his name, and it sounded like a prayer. I love you, he said simply. I know it's crazy, I know it's impossible, but I've loved you for 3 years. Every day I wake up, I think of you. Every decision I make, I wonder what you would think. You've become the reason for my existence. Tears streamed down Melissa's face. I love you too. The words came out before she could stop them. 3 years of repressed feeling finally finding voice. Melissa, I know it's crazy. I know we're from different worlds, but I love you too, and it haunts me every day. And then he kissed her. It was a desperate kiss, full of years of contained desire, of accepted impossibilities, of forbidden dreams finally taking shape. His hands got lost in her hair, hers clung to his back as if he were going to disappear. When they separated, both were panting. We just complicated everything, he whispered. I know. There's no going back. I know. They're going to try to separate us. They're going to use everything against us. Melissa held his face in her hands. Then let's make every moment we have valuable. But in the hallway, footsteps approached. Sandra had returned to fetch a forgotten file and stopped, shocked, before the half-open door of the office. On the floor, behind the desk, the CEO of who the company was embracing the cleaning lady, whispering words of love. Sandra retreated silently, her heart racing. She knew she had in her hands the most dangerous information of her career, and she knew exactly what Constance Vanderbilt would pay to get it. The fate of Mark and Melissa had just been sealed, and they didn't even know it. Asterisk. In the weeks following the kiss, Mark and Melissa lived on a roller coaster of conflicting emotions. They met in secret, whispered conversations in empty hallways, loaded looks during meetings, encrypted text messages that Melissa deleted immediately after reading. Mark cancelled the official engagement, claiming pending contractual issues, gaining a month's respite, but he knew it was just a temporary truce. Constance was furious and suspicious, multiplying her visits to the company and watching everything with eagle eyes. It was on a rainy Thursday that everything began to fall apart. Melissa was cleaning the restroom on the 28th floor when she heard familiar footsteps. Her heart raced. Mark had promised to meet her there at 6 when the building was empty. But when she turned, she found Sandra standing in the doorway, a cold smile on her lips. "Good afternoon, Melissa. How dedicated you are, working so late." "Mrs. Sandra, I was just finishing up here." "Of course you were." Sandra entered the restroom, closing the door behind her. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" The tone was too gentle, artificial. Melissa felt a chill down her spine. "What is it?" "You know, I've worked for the Vanderbilt family for 15 years. I've known Mark since he was an inexperienced young man. I've learned to protect his interests and those of the company." Melissa squeezed the broom against her chest, trying to control her nervousness. "That's good for him. So you can imagine my concern when I see my boss making choices, let's say, unwise." "I don't understand." Sandra laughed softly, pulled her cell phone out of her pocket, and showed Melissa a photo. The image was blurred, taken from a distance, but it clearly showed two figures embracing in Mark's office. Melissa's blood turned to ice. "This photo was taken last week. Interesting, don't you think? What do you think the press would do with information like this? Billionaire CEO gets involved with cleaning lady. It would be the headline of the year." "What do you want?" Melissa's voice came out as a whisper. "I want to protect Mark, and you should want that too. Because if this information leaks, who do you think will suffer the most? Him, with all his fortune and power? Or you, a poor and unprotected woman?" Sandra approached, her eyes gleaming with a calculated cruelty. "They will destroy you, Melissa. They'll say you're a gold digger, a hustler who seduced her boss to get ahead in life. They'll investigate every penny you earn, every bill you pay. And your family, your sick mother, your siblings, how do you think they'll react when they find out that their daughter, the sister they admire, is the boss's mistress?" Tears began to run down Melissa's face. We didn't. It doesn't matter what you did or didn't do. What matters is what people will believe. And believe me, they'll believe the worst. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I love Mark as if he were my own son. And I won't allow him to destroy everything he's built for an infatuation. He has responsibilities, commitments, a bright future with a woman of his class." Sandra put her cell phone away, the smile returning. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay away from him. Completely. No dramatic explanations, no farewell letters. You're simply going to stop responding to his advances, and if he insists, you'll make it clear that there's no future between you. And if I don't do that, then this photo goes to every newspaper in New York tomorrow morning, along with a complete dossier about your personal life that I'm already preparing. Did you know that your brother Lucas has some small debts with dangerous people? That your mother needs a very expensive treatment that you can't afford? It would be a shame if this information became public." Melissa leaned against the sink, her legs wobbly. Sandra knew about Lucas, about the debts he had hidden from the family. "How?" "You're diabolical," she whispered. "I'm efficient, and I'm offering a solution that protects everyone involved. Mark is free to make the right choices. You maintain your dignity, and your family is safe. Everyone wins, everyone but me. Honey, you never had a real chance with him. Think about it. What future would you have? Him being lynched by the media for stooping so low, you being crucified for being ambitious? And the children? Do you think it would be fair to raise children in this environment of prejudice and resentment?" Each word was a precise stab. Sandra knew exactly Melissa's deepest fears. "I need to think." "There's nothing to think about. You have until Monday to make the right decision. After that, I'll take the necessary measures to protect Mark, with or without your cooperation." Sandra headed to the door, then turned one last time. "Oh, and Melissa, if you tell him about our conversation, I'll deny everything, and the photo comes out immediately. Mark has trusted me for 15 years. You, a few weeks. Who do you think he'll believe?" The door closed with a soft click, leaving Melissa alone with her despair. Half an hour later, when Mark arrived for their meeting, he found her crying inconsolably. She made up an excuse about family problems and could barely look him in the eyes. "Melissa, what's wrong? Can I help?" "No," she said, her voice choked. "There are things that not all your money can solve." That night, Melissa didn't sleep. She walked through the small house, watching her mother cough in the room, Lucas studying for his college entrance exams, her younger sister sleeping peacefully. Sandra was right. She had never had a real chance with Mark. And now, the price of having dreamed would be paid by her whole family. On Monday morning, when Mark tried to talk to her, Melissa looked away and mumbled that they had to stop with this madness. He didn't understand. How could he? He didn't know that every cold word she said was shattering her own heart. And in her office, Sandra watched everything with satisfaction. Phase 1 of the plan was complete. Soon, Mark would be free to make the right choices. And if Melissa suffered, well, sometimes love requires sacrifices. Asterisk. For 2 weeks, Melissa managed to maintain the charade. She avoided Mark in the hallways, answered his messages coldly, made up excuses not to be alone with him. She saw the confusion and pain growing in his eyes each day, but Sandra was always around, reminding her with meaningful looks of the consequences of any weakness. Mark was desperate. He didn't understand Melissa's sudden change, her monosyllabic answers, the way she ran away whenever he approached. On Friday, he intercepted her in the service elevator. "Melissa, please, explain to me what's going on," he pleaded, pressing the stop button. "A week ago you said you loved me. Now you can barely look at me." She kept her eyes fixed on the floor, her heart breaking. "I thought better of it. It was a mistake." "What mistake? What changed?" "I changed. I realized that this can't work." "Why? We can face anything together." His voice was full of a vulnerability that almost broke her resistance. "Almost. We can't. We're from different worlds. Your mother was right." "Since when do you care what my mother thinks?" Melissa raised her eyes finally, and he saw tears there. "Since I understood that she's right. I don't belong in your world, Mark, and you don't belong in mine. That's a lie, and you know it. It's the truth. And the sooner we accept it, the better for everyone." She pressed the elevator button and got off on the next floor, leaving him alone and shattered. But Sandra had underestimated one thing. Love makes people do crazy things. On the following Monday, Mark made a drastic decision. He convened a meeting with the board of directors and, to everyone's shock, announced that he was definitively breaking off the marriage agreement with Fernanda. "There's a woman I love," he declared, ignoring the indignant murmurs, "and I won't marry anyone but her." The news reached Sandra in a matter of minutes, and it reached Constance in seconds. Sandra knew she had to act fast. If Mark publicly assumed the relationship, her blackmail would lose its power. It was time for Plan B. That afternoon, Melissa received a phone call at work. "New York Presbyterian Hospital. It's about your mother. She was admitted here an hour ago with severe breathing difficulties." Melissa dropped everything and ran to the hospital. She found her mother in the ICU, intubated, unconscious. The doctor was direct. "The situation is serious. She needs immediate treatment that costs about $200,000. Without it, she won't make it through the week." $200,000, the equivalent of 20 years of Melissa's salary. She collapsed into a chair in the hallway, sobbing. That's when her cell phone rang. "Sandra, I heard about your mother. How terrible. How did you do this?" "I didn't do anything, dear. I just took advantage of an opportunity. But I can fix everything." "What?" "I have contacts at the hospital. I can guarantee that your mother receives the best treatment free of charge. And I can also settle your brother Lucas's debts. 200,000 for the treatment plus 50 for the debts. $250,000. Melissa felt nauseous. "In exchange for what?" "You disappear from Mark's life. Forever. You quit your job, move to another city, take your family. I'll arrange a job for you in Atlanta, far from here. And if I don't accept, your mother dies. Your brother may have serious problems with the loan sharks, and the photo will still go to the press, destroying what's left of your family's reputation." Melissa closed her eyes, defeated. There was no way out. "I accept. Great decision. The money will be available in an hour. And Melissa, if Mark comes after you, if he tries to find you, I'll tell him everything. About the blackmail, about the money. Imagine how he'll feel knowing that the love of his life betrayed him for money." 2 hours later, Mrs. Carmen was being transferred to a private room, receiving the best medical care available. Lucas was informed that his debts had been paid off by an anonymous Good Samaritan. Melissa knew she had sold her soul. The next morning, Mark found a simple letter on his desk. "Mark, when you read this, I'll already be gone. Accept that there's no future for us. Please don't look for me. Be happy with someone from your world. With love, and goodbye forever. Melissa." He ran to the cleaning department. Mr. Johnson confirmed Melissa had resigned the day before, citing urgent family problems. She left no contact address. Mark spent the next 3 days like a man possessed, hiring detectives, investigating, searching. But Melissa had disappeared completely, as if she had never existed. It was Sandra who finally found him in his office. In the early hours of Thursday, drunk, surrounded by empty bottles, crying like a child. "She left me," he murmured. "She really left me." "I'm so sorry, Mark," said Sandra, her voice full of false compassion. "But maybe it's better this way. You were too different." "Shut up," he said in a dead voice. "Just shut up." The next day, Mark announced that he would marry Fernanda in 2 months. Constance was radiant. The board sighed in relief. The press celebrated the young CEO's return to reason. But those who knew him saw the truth. Mark Vanderbilt had died. The day Melissa left, what remained was just an empty shell, fulfilling expected social movements. In Atlanta, Melissa began a new life, caring for her mother, who was slowly recovering, working in a local hospital. Every night, she cried herself to sleep, remembering the man she loved and who she believed had abandoned her by choice. Their love had been destroyed by a lie, and the worst part was that they both believed the other had given up. Sandra had won, but her victory tasted like ashes, because even she hadn't foreseen the complete devastation that her actions would cause. 3 months later, on the day of Mark's wedding to Fernanda, the newspapers featured photos of the wedding of the year. He was elegant, smiled for the cameras, fulfilled his role. But his eyes were dead. And 1,000 miles away, Melissa read the news in an old magazine in the waiting room of the hospital where she worked, and felt her heart break once more. Everything was lost. Love had been defeated by greed and manipulation. Or at least, that's what they both believed. 8 months had passed since Melissa had left New York. 8 months of a mechanical life in Atlanta, divided between work at the hospital and caring for her mother, who had finally recovered completely. 8 months trying to forget a love that consumed her from the inside out. It was on a Tuesday morning that everything changed. Melissa was organizing medical records at the reception desk of St. Raphael's Hospital when a familiar voice made her freeze. "Melissa Silver, my God, it's really you!" She turned and saw Carla, her former cleaning colleague in New York, accompanying an elderly lady. "Carla, what?" What are you doing here? I came with my mother-in-law for a consultation, but we missed you. Everyone was worried. I had to leave New York. Family problems. Carla approached, lowering her voice. Girl, you have no idea what happened after you left. Mr. Johnson was fired for knowing too much. Sandra was promoted to administrative director, and Dr. Mark. She shook her head sadly. Poor thing. That man has become a shadow of what he was. Melissa's heart raced. What do you mean? He married that socialite, but everyone at the company says it's just a facade. They barely speak to each other. He works until dawn, doesn't smile anymore, looks like a living dead man. And you know what's even stranger? What? Since you left, he argues with Sandra all the time. Just last week he yelled at her in front of everyone, said she was a poisonous snake. Nobody understood why. Melissa felt a pang in her chest. Mark was suffering, but he had gotten married, moved on with his life. Carla, can I ask you something? Did you hear any gossip about me? And Dr. Mark when I worked there? Carla frowned. Gossip? What kind of gossip? Anything. If anyone suspected anything... Girl, you were the most discreet employee at the company. I never saw anyone comment anything about you except praise for your work. Why? Melissa's stomach churned. If there was no gossip, why had Sandra lied? That night, Melissa couldn't sleep. Carla's words echoed in her mind. For the first time in months, she began to question everything that had happened. The next day, she called Mr. Johnson. The old supervisor had been fired due to budget cuts, but his voice sounded surprised and happy to hear Melissa. Dear girl, how are you? You disappeared from the world. Mr. Johnson, can you tell me exactly how my resignation was? What did Sandra say? What a strange thing to ask. She said that you had resigned for personal reasons, but I thought it was weird because you didn't say goodbye to anyone. And then she told me not to comment about you with anyone, that it was to preserve your privacy. And when were you fired? A week after you left. Sandra said that I knew things I shouldn't know. I never understood what she meant. Melissa hung up the phone with trembling hands. Little by little, the pieces of the puzzle began to form. Sandra had lied about the gossip, fired Mr. Johnson to silence him, and even invented the story about her having resigned. But the definitive proof came unexpectedly. Lucas, her brother, had gotten a scholarship in Tallahassee and was saying goodbye when he let slip a crucial piece of information. Mel, I never thanked you properly for having paid off my debts. Your debts? Lucas, I didn't pay off any debts. He stopped, confused. What do you mean? The loan shark said that a woman called, paid everything off, and even paid the interest. Said she was your boss. What woman? I don't remember the name. Sandra something. Melissa's world collapsed. Sandra had paid Lucas's debts. But with what money? And why? That dawn, Melissa made the bravest decision of her life. She used her savings to buy a ticket back to New York. She needed to discover the truth. She arrived in the early hours of Friday and went straight to a cheap hotel near the company. She would spend the weekend investigating, and on Monday she would confront Sandra. But fate had other plans. On Saturday morning, she was having coffee at the hotel when she saw on television a news item that left her panicked. Businessman Mark Vanderbilt, 40, was hospitalized early this morning after suffering a car accident on the FDR Drive. According to witnesses, he lost control of the vehicle and crashed into the guardrail. His condition is serious. Melissa ran to the hospital. She didn't care if someone saw her, if Sandra found out she was back. The only thing that mattered was that Mark was hurt. At the hospital, she found Constance and Fernanda in the ICU waiting room. They didn't recognize her. After all, for them, Melissa had only been just an employee. It was while talking to a nurse that she learned the details of the accident. He was alone in the car at 3 in the morning. There was no alcohol in his blood, but the security cameras showed that he was crying before losing control. The doctors think it may have been a depressive episode. Melissa hid behind a pillar when she saw Sandra arriving at the hospital. The woman was visibly nervous, checking her cell phone constantly. "How is he?" Sandra asked Constance. "Stable, but still unconscious. The doctors say there may be neurological sequelae." "My God, if he dies," Sandra murmured, and Melissa saw tears in her eyes, tears that seemed more of guilt than of sadness. It was then that Melissa realized Sandra was also suffering. All that manipulation, that cruel blackmail, had destroyed not only her and Mark, but also tormented Sandra herself. That night, Melissa made a decision. It didn't matter anymore what Sandra did, what threats she used. She was going to find out the whole truth and fight for the man she loved, even if it was too late. On Sunday, she followed Sandra discreetly. She saw the woman enter a church, kneel before the altar and cry copiously. Then she went to a cemetery and laid flowers on a grave. Melissa approached after Sandra left. The tombstone read, "Robert Santos Silva, beloved father, who taught us that true love knows no barriers." Robert Santos Silva, the same last name as Melissa. With her heart racing, she searched the public records. Robert Santos Silva had been married to Sandra Santos, had died 5 years ago, and he had a daughter from a first marriage, a daughter named Melissa Silva. Sandra was her stepmother, and she had manipulated everything not out of loyalty to Mark, but out of jealousy of a stepdaughter who didn't even know of her existence. Now, Melissa had all the pieces of the puzzle, and she had the weapon to destroy Sandra and win back Mark, if he survived. Asterisk. On Monday morning, Melissa waited for Sandra at the company door. When the woman arrived, elegant and imposing as always, she found her sitting at the reception desk. "Melissa," Sandra paled. "What? How did you? We need to talk, now. I have nothing to say to you. Our agreement was based on a lie, Sandra. Or should I say, stepmother." Sandra's face completely decomposed. For a moment, all her composure disappeared, leaving only a woman haunted by her own past. "How did you find out?" "I should have imagined that an investigation into my family would reveal the truth. Robert Santos Silva, my biological father, your second husband, the man who abandoned me when I was 5 years old to marry you." Sandra leaned against the wall, trembling. "He left me for your mother," she whispered, "said he had never stopped loving Carmen, that I had only been a mistake. He left me 6 months pregnant." "Pregnant?" Melissa felt the ground open up. "I lost the baby 2 weeks after he left. Stress, the doctor said, but I knew it had been a broken heart." Tears streamed down Sandra's face. "I spent 15 years hating you and your mother for having taken him from me." The revelation hit Melissa like a punch. Sandra had lost a child because of her father's choice. "That's why you did all this? For revenge?" "In the beginning, yes. When I saw you at the company, when I realized that Mark was falling in love, I saw a chance to make you suffer as I suffered, to take away from you the person you loved, as you took from me. And now, Mark is dying, Sandra, because of your lies." Sandra collapsed into a chair, sobbing. I know I went too far. I thought he would overcome it, that he would marry Fernanda and be happy, but he never recovered. He's been withering for months, working 16 hours a day to not think. And when I heard about the accident, you have to undo this. Now, how? How do I undo 8 months of lies? By telling the truth, to him, to everyone, and by helping me save him. Sandra raised her eyes, red with tears. Why would you help me after everything I've done? Because despite everything, you're also suffering. And because my father may have chosen my mother, but that doesn't justify what you did to us. For a long moment, the two women looked at each other, two victims of the same man, separated by years of pain and misunderstanding. What do you want me to do? Asked Sandra finally. First take me to Mark, then tell everything, to him, to his family, to whoever is necessary. E.T. 2 hours later, Sandra and Melissa entered the hospital ICU. Constance and Fernanda protested, but Sandra used her authority as director of the company to gain access. Mark was unconscious, connected to machines, his face pale and thin. Melissa held his hand and felt tears streaming down. He's been like this for months, said Fernanda softly. Since you left, he's never been the same. Our marriage is a sham. He whispers your name in his sleep. Why didn't you divorce him? Because I also love him, and I knew that if I stayed, maybe one day he would learn to love me back, but now I see that I was wrong. He will never love anyone but you. Melissa turned to Sandra. Tell them everything. And Sandra told about the blackmail, about the lies, about how she had forged the separation of the two, about her history with Melissa's father, about the revenge that turned into remorse. Constance was livid. You manipulated my son, destroyed his happiness. I thought I was protecting him. You almost killed him. Fernanda was furious. All this time he was suffering for nothing. Asterisk. It was then that Mark groaned softly. His eyes opened slowly, confused. Melissa, he murmured, focusing on her face. You came back? I'm here, she said, squeezing his hand. And I'm not leaving again. But you left me, said there was no future. It was all a lie, my love. Sandra blackmailed me, threatened my family. I never wanted to leave you. Mark's eyes filled with tears. I knew it. Deep down, I knew you wouldn't abandon me by choice. But everyone said, I'm so sorry, said Sandra, approaching. I'm so sorry for everything. I destroyed your happiness for a foolish revenge against a man who died 5 years ago. Mark looked at Sandra with a mixture of anger and pity. Why? Why did you do this to us? Sandra told her story once more, admitting her mistakes, asking for forgiveness. When she finished, the room was silent. I will never completely forgive what you did, said Mark finally. But I understand your pain, and I thank you for having had the courage to tell the truth now. Constance, surprisingly, was the one who spoke first. Melissa, I owe you an apology. I judged you without knowing you, based on foolish prejudices. If my son loves you, and if you make each other happy, then you have my blessing. Fernanda held Melissa's hand. Take care of him. He needs someone who truly loves him, not a marriage of convenience. 6 months later, Mark and Melissa were married in a simple ceremony, surrounded by family and true friends. Sandra had resigned and moved upstate, seeking peace for her tormented soul. Fernanda had found true love with a doctor she met during Mark's recovery. On their honeymoon in Maui, while watching the sunset, Mark held Melissa in his arms. You know what's funny? All those obstacles, all that pain. In the end, it only made us love each other more. True love always finds a way, said Melissa, kissing him softly. Always, he agreed, always finds a way. And there, under the golden sky of Hawaii, two hearts that had been separated by lies and united by truth celebrated the victory of love over all obstacles. Because in the end, no matter how many walls are built, how many lies are told, how many prejudices exist, true love always prevails. And they had proven it.